All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Non-Victim Nation podcast. And today, as you can see, we have a full house. And so rather than me trying to explain who everybody is, I am just going to kind of go around and have everybody introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Craig.
Oh, I'm Craig Sawyer, founder of Parents for Children's Care.
There you go.
So, my name's Sutton Faircloth. I'm a founder of the Warriors Forge.
Warriors Forge. Making knives for.
Yes, making knives for veterans and first responders.
Very cool.
Free to them.
There you go. And then
I'm Kevin Moore with M3 Tactical Tech. Um, yeah, so I started my business in 2017, so it's been a fun ride.
I got you.
Yeah, I got to meet these two fine gentlemen,
Right.
and quite a few other people, but
Yeah.
glad to be here today.
There you go. I'm glad to have you all. So you all have kind of shared backgrounds to some degree, one way or another.
Mhm.
So, were you all in the military?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Different branches or
believe you.
Yeah, I'm Air Force.
Army.
I
okay,
started off in the Marine Corps and then I did Navy.
right on.
Yeah.
Got the best of
Covered
both
almost
worlds.
all of them.
Yeah. No
Just
coasties
missing
here.
the Coast Guard.
Right on. And then you're all entrepreneurs on top of this. So you all have like your own companies, organizations that you run.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got into a little bit of that. Uh,
Yeah, you want me to just go into it?
Go
All
ahead.
right. I was doing my MBA in I was working for Liberty Mutual Insurance. I don't even remember what year that was. So 2017 is when I started M3 Tactical. So it was during my MBA. Our professor said that we were going to start an LLC, and we're going to start a fake LLC, and then we're going to go through the different processes of running a business. So I was like, well, that's kind of not very wise use of my time. If we're starting a fake LLC, I'm just going to start a real LLC,
Right.
right? So I went home that night. So I'm like, I got one day to figure out what I want to do with my life. You know what I mean? So I'm going to do this.
But no pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. So I came back the next day and I decided that night I wanted to start a knife company and filed the paperwork, came up with M3. First, it was three of us. Well, our last name was M, right? We all started with M.
Okay.
And then the next day after I filed the paperwork and got into class, I'm starting to think like, wait a minute, no one cares about my last name, right? Like,
Right.
who am I, right? Like, I'm not a celebrity, not a
Mhm.
basketball player or something like that. So I was like, I want it to mean something, I want
Right.
it to mean something. So it's modern mission mobility. So we create products using modern processes and modern steels for your unique mission, whether you're like a cubicle warrior, if you're an actual warrior.
Right.
And then mobility has to do with our sheaths, our carry systems. A lot of times I come across knives that I really like. I'm sure we all have, and you're like, what am I going to do with this sheath? Right? Like, how the heck
Mhm.
am I going to carry this thing? It's not practical. So that was one thing that we really stressed. But yeah, I went to work one day and they were asking me to be okay with all of our reps making less money and I wasn't really
Yeah.
kind of saw the writing on the wall and decided to quit my job and come home and let my wife know. That was a little bit of a difficult conversation, but she took it really well and she asked me what we were going to do, because I was making quite a bit of money at that time.
Mhm.
And I remember telling her everything was going to be fine. And then I left to go to the gym and I got to the gym and I was like, what did I do? What did I
It's
do?
real.
Yeah.
In a hurry, doesn't it?
Yeah. It was the first time I ever felt like, you've seen Austin Powers when he loses his mojo.
Yeah.
Oh,
I felt it was the only time I just felt like somebody just syringed it right out of me. And I was just remember shaking and being so fearful.
Right.
And I just started praying, like God, like, I I kind of was like, God, I did this, but
Help
like
me
I
out
need
of
your
it.
help. And
Help me fix my bonehead and
yeah, yeah, help me fix this
thing.
bonehead and move. But it's funny. The other day, I have one of those Aura frames
Mhm.
that cycles pictures, and one of the pictures that I loaded up there was that day I went to go get our son from school.
Mhm.
And I love our boys. We have three boys, and I picked up my oldest son and I said, "Daddy doesn't have to go to work anymore." and it was really special. And we got to just
Yeah.
hug it out, and he was so excited. He had no clue what that meant, right?
Right.
Just like, oh, great, Dad's home forever. That's amazing. Um, but I've got to spend so much time with my family that I would have never got to spend had it not been for this business. So I'm very grateful that God has allowed me to do what I want to do
Right.
and just have fun and give back, meet these guys, and we'll kind of talk a little bit. Craig and I have got some things going on together to benefit his company, but just being able to get involved with people like Craig and
Mhm.
Sutton and what they want to do with their
Right.
company. So I'm sure we'll kind of, after we all talk a little bit, we'll
There we
figure
go.
that out. Yeah.
Well, look, some things money can't buy. And a lot
Yeah.
of guys that make a tremendous wealth of money find themselves trying to buy their time back with their
Yeah.
family. So I celebrate what you had there, what you found. You saw it maybe potentially as a boneheaded mistake, but it ended up being the
Yeah.
right call. And
Yeah.
so I celebrate that, man.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It was a huge blessing to have that time. You're right, though. And then a lot of times when they have the money and they try to buy their time back, they're trapped, in some big corporate position, and they have less time. They think they're going to have all this time once they work their way up, and then they end up having a lot less time.
Yeah. Well, that lesson hit me pretty hard. I was in a vehicle with a fellow operator overseas in a war zone, making the money contracting that I could make over there to feed my family and try to provide for them. And I was telling him that, man, I went home and like coaches and the teachers, like, oh, I guess you do actually exist after all. And walked away. I'm like, why am I the bad guy? And he said, Saw, kids spell love Time.
Right.
I was like, oh, dude, you're right, man. It dawned on me. I was like, I'm getting it all wrong. I'm over here, dodging, all these V beds, almost getting blown off the road and burying teammates and trying to provide for my family. But what they really need is me there.
Mhm.
Um, you know, they need that father figure. So I started making some adjustments in my life to be there more. But that's why when you're like, you got to be home, I'm like, that's priceless.
Yeah, it is
It's
priceless.
priceless, man. When you weigh out how that impacts your children and all the lessons that you'll be able to instill in them because you're closer to them
Hmm.
before they get out is you can't put a price tag on that.
No, and the time with them goes by so quick. They grow up so fast. Everyone says they grow up so fast, but it's like until you have kids, you don't get it.
Yeah.
They're just up and gone, man.
I have a 7-month-old at home, a little
Yeah,
girl, and you
she's
thought
adorable,
she
dude.
is so
She's
adorable.
so cute.
Yeah, she's absolutely
I
adorable.
told my wife the
She'll
other
be
day, I
asking for
said,
the keys next week.
I told my wife on the way home, I said, I found our son's future wife
Ah, it's
because we have
she's
a year and a half old also.
yeah.
Yeah, she's so adorable.
So, and that being said, too, is like I told you before, like I am the stay-at-home dad. I got my retirement through the Army and stuff,
Yeah.
and having that time now, we had a good amount of time on our before my wife we came back here and she started back to work, and I understand that. I understand what you're saying. A lot of other guys tell me it's like, dude, if you even have an opportunity, even maybe homeschool too, like just in the early years, and then let them, go like maybe middle school or something like that. Like that's just going to be tenfold impact on your child. So things to contemplate about. So yeah,
Yeah.
Homeschool didn't used to seem to be necessary so much. It used to be like a unique luxury. And now it's like, well, if you want your kid to be sane and
Oh
whole, you
yeah.
almost need to. It's like, wow,
When I
things
was
have gotten so
yeah,
different. You know,
hmm
real different. When I was growing up, I remember thinking like homeschool people were like they live out in the sticks and like it's just this thing that they do and their kids don't get to take part in all these fun things.
right,
And now
right.
I'm grown up with my own
a
kids and
little
I'm like,
socially weird.
yeah,
And
it's weird that we send our kids to school sometimes, to a place where their mind is manipulated to think like the rest of the world. It's really sad, scary.
It's tragic when you see
It
what
is
they're
tragic.
programming you to put up with.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
It's concerning, man.
Luckily, our kids haven't come home and said anything off the wall yet, but yeah, I kind of feel like it's a time bomb.
some kind of weird area that I noticed driving around too is all the new high schools around like Queen Creek and stuff where I'm around. they all look like institutions. They all have like thin, tall windows and stuff. They look like prisons. I'm like, yeah, why are they all looking like that?
Really?
Like they're getting the windows are getting. They're probably pointing off saying it's like probably for heat efficiency or something like that. You
Mhm.
know, less windows, better better green plan or something like that for the building. But really, it's just more looks more like an institution to me.
Yeah,
Right.
It's kind of weird.
they're doing a. I noticed when charter schools became bigger really fast, and now the charter schools they're the ones that are building the more like expensive looking institutional buildings versus like a school.
Hmm.
Yeah. I remember I drove by one of them with my friend, and he's like, "What the heck is that?" I'm like, "That's a school," and he's like, "Dude, it looks like a prison or just like a government building, not really a school." Yeah.
So, kind of going back to what you do,
Yeah.
how did you get started with that whole idea?
You know, well, again, about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years now,
Mhm.
probably 5 years. I can't tell. I think 5 years. I started making knives. My buddy, I was asking about a bunch of metal. He's a metal worker. He's a machinist and stuff. And I kept on asking about the steels and stuff. I was like, dude, why don't you just buy a piece of blank steel and make a knife and try it out?
Mhm.
And then I did, and then I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I called my buddy, and I just found out he just started making knives too. This is like we're rudimentary. We're using hand files, grinders. I'm trying to make a barbecue pit forge in my backyard, trying to figure out how you heat it up and maybe
Right.
hammer on the thing. And then I just started up a GoFundMe because at this time, like I didn't have all my funds set up properly and stuff. And yeah, people were really behind me because I wanted to share this experience after forging this knife with my buddy. He's like, dude, this is like one of the greatest experiences ever. Like I hadn't been thinking about anything except for just making the knife while we're doing this. And so after um going through another program that I went through called Save a Warrior, which is a it's an amazing program. It's for, it's a suicide prevention program essentially.
Mhm.
I realized that there was not a lot of programs out there for first responders, like paramedics or firemen or anything like that, at least outside of maybe some secular things for them, maybe in their local areas to get them out and to help them out. Maybe it's just mainly counseling or some outside counseling, but there's no actual, you know, retreat type fun stuff to do to get their minds off of stuff. And
Mhm.
so, and I realized that going there, it's like, talking to my buddies. And so got set up and I had a couple guys through Gilbert Police Department come through and like, dude, this is amazing. Like just thinking all because all you have time to do is think about making the knife. You don't have time to think about anything else because
Right.
there's so many steps. I kind of tied it up to 30 steps in making a knife
Right.
and list them all off and you don't have time to think about anything else but what you're doing. Otherwise you're gonna lose a finger or smash it or destroy it or whatever, cut
Right.
it. So burn yourself. And it's just kind of flourished from there. My buddy was like, dude, you should create a nonprofit or something like that. And so then I found out that how hard it is to really kind of start a nonprofit unless you're like have a team of dudes. So I just
Right.
call it that more or less. I don't have a 501(c)(3). I never had. I just mainly just put all my own money into it. And if anybody wanted to donate while they were there making a knife, I just immediately go online and buy more materials for the next guy to come
Mhm.
by and have more options for them, cooler handle scales or steels and stuff like that. And then
Right.
yeah. So I've probably done maybe 25 to 50 knives now with firemen. I hadn't had any paramedics come through yet, which is interesting. But firemen, police. When I was in Houston, had quite a few different guys. First time having double amputees coming through and like working with them and making a knife and actually like hammering and helping them out. It's really fun. You know,
I'm sure it's therapeutic for
It
them.
Yeah.
it's super
Yeah.
therapeutic for them, and it's like, dude, you can't understand how good it is just to only think about this knife for like 2 days, or even because they can only come in 1 day a week, and then they come back the next day because it usually takes 2 to 3 days to make this knife
Okay.
because it's usually about 4 to 6 hour time block that we're in the shop we're working, and so
Mhm.
in that time frame they go back home and then they're thinking about the knife all week long and what they're going to do next and stuff like that. It's pretty exciting to hear about it. It's like,
Yeah.
Like a
so
defrag and reboot.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's nice.
yeah,
Yeah. To pull out of that rat race,
exactly.
pull out of the matrix for a minute and focus on something real,
And that's another thing
even
too.
if it's simple.
Yeah,
I think the beauty is probably in its simplicity also. Like, here's a tool you can use in the kitchen every day.
Mhm.
and it's something that you can make that'll work. And
Yeah.
there's no politics.
No.
There's no subversion.
Mhm.
There's no distortion. There's no deceit in it. It is what it is. Make it and use it and be well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is of course the military I learned how to be patient. You know,
Right.
just be patient. I've only had one guy that was just really, really like scary and how dangerous because he's never, never touched anything, for tool wise, like
Right.
never hammered on anything. He puts a nail in the wall, he said. And so I've had guys that come in there that were just grinding wizards, never touched a grinder before. And that's the most dangerous thing in there is the grinder. It's amazing.
Mhm.
But and that's the thing too, is he's talking about the kitchen knives. Like that's what we make.
Mhm.
We make a kitchen knife because I find it's more important for a guy to rather have some cool tactical knife that maybe sit, on his kit or like in his glove box or something like
Mhm.
that. Maybe someone might carry around with him every day, but I find it more appealing for this veteran or first responder to have a kitchen knife that they can use every day, maybe hopefully holistically boost them to want to use it and take care of themselves better than going to eat fast food or going out, that they want to use that knife and
Right.
chop up some vegetables and take care of themselves.
Right. So, how do people typically find you? Is this all just word of mouth?
It's all word of mouth. I mean, I have a Facebook page. I had a website once before. There's not really a lot of traction because I myself, of course, have dealt with, anxiety and PTS and depression.
Hmm.
I'm doing way better than I had been before. I don't deal with my depression and anxiety so much as mainly just PTS and little cues and things, ticks that get me sometimes. But I was a little overwhelmed at first starting it off.
Right.
So I mean, for me, now I can see I can do a little bit more. But I was probably only doing maybe, one to two warriors coming through a month.
Hmm.
So I didn't want to overwhelm myself. And also on the side of that, I was making knives too, just to sell, to get a little
Right.
extra money here and there on the
I
side. So,
gotcha.
I just still want to burn myself out. Now I feel way more empowered to work with a lot more men and women to make more knives with them. So
So, do you have plans then to kind of like broaden out the?
well, that's
Yeah,
why Kevin and I are
yeah,
getting back.
talking about that. Well, let's
Yeah,
kick over to
yeah.
Craig.
Okay.
Talk about Veterans for Child Rescue, man.
Yes, that is something I'd
Well,
like.
do you want to laugh or you want to cry? Because there's
Oh,
one thing in there.
start with a little bit of laughter, then we can cry, and then we can maybe laugh again.
Well, we laugh every day because we're supposed to.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, life's supposed to be a joyous occasion, a learning process, right? So there's always funny stuff. And any time you get team guys together, you're gonna have buffoonery and humor. So my wife and I wake up teasing each other and laughing,
yeah.
and our puppies lick us awake, and that's funny. Um, oh man, what we've been learning lately is pretty serious information about why nothing works right anymore. Is there so much corruption? Why are so many people in charge of institutions that are supposed to be acting on our best interest doing the opposite? And what we're learning is the same thing that JFK talked about in his secret societies speech.
Hmm.
These men are in institutions forward facing the public. They are a certain religious institution or agency or whatever. On the backside, these guys have sworn blood oaths to secret groups that they're in, and they're more loyal to that than they are the institution or the agency that they're paid to run for the people.
Mhm.
So we're being betrayed because these dudes are in clubs, man. They're in clubs where they do, and what we're finding that all these clubs have in common is the sick stuff they do to kids. I'm like, what is it? You know, a small child has none of the bells and whistles that a full grown bombshell woman would have, right?
Hmm.
She's got all the bells and whistles that indicate to you she's going to be a strong, viable mate to give you strong, healthy offspring. Instinctively, we should be attracted to that. So a child in a diaper has none of that. So it's not an organic or normal or natural tendency to harm a little one like that. There's something very dark about that.
Mhm.
The good news is it's getting exposed increasingly, and it's all going to be torn down. All these scumbags, and I'll call them scumbags with authority because
Yeah.
there's nothing good about it. And so we're learning of these groups, their networks. We're interviewing hundreds of their surviving victims. And a lot of the victims don't survive because the abuse is just horrific. And I won't drag you all the way into how bad it goes, but imagine the worst thing you could do to a child with blowtorches and whatever else. It gets so depraved. It is not anything natural or normal that a human being would occur to do to a helpless and defenseless, a pure, loving little child.
Mhm.
So they do it for their own spiritual reasons. And so they believe they're into some very, very dark stuff. So our thing is, we don't like that. Kids don't like it. Creator doesn't like it. So we're going to wreck your house. We're going to tear down your institution. We're called to expose it. We're going to expose it. And we're not afraid of you. We're going to expose you in documentary content. We're going to expose you on the radio. We're going to expose you on television. We're going to expose you in podcasts. We're going to expose you in newspapers, social media, billboards, NASCAR, on and on and on. And we're going to start arresting you guys and putting you in prison, putting you in a box where you can rape no more. So we've done a bit of that. So we have 26 of those guys we've put in prison, 100% conviction rate, another 17 warrants of more that are waiting to get doors kicked on them or yanked out of their vehicles and cuffed up. And we're making more and more content, alerting the populace to what's going on. Because as a friend of mine, I just talked to him on the way here. In fact, we'd grown up in the area just north of Houston together. And he went off into an intelligence agency, and I went off into the Marine Corps SEAL team. And we were smoking cigars back home in Houston once. And he said, Craig, this area has grown into the hottest epicenter of child trafficking in the continental United States due to the pipeline through Mexico up through Houston and the oil money and all these other factors. And I couldn't comprehend a couple of aspects of that. Number one, how that I couldn't reconcile that with our culture there that was so God, country, and family, American pie culture. I'm like, how does that level of evil exist here in our hometown? So I felt like that, a nasty bully had just walked up and, you know, slapped me in the face and taken a dump on my lunch or something. I'm like, oh, me, you're gonna confront me like that. You come here to my hometown. Then now you're gonna spark the fight in me. And so I felt that type of affront, that type of offense and invasion. And I also felt that spiritual side of it, that some of the agents said this is a spiritually protected crime. This is there's some dark stuff surrounding this that's unique.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I think I get a bit of that. Due to my father was a strong spiritual man of God, and he understood a lot of that. But the other thing I was like, I'm looking at it and I'm realizing you can't run any crime to that scale, to industrial scale in the continental United States without all the powers that be knowing about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't sell a popsicle without the IRS, asking you for your tax dollars on that, popsicle, right?
Yeah.
So how is it that they're running children and child trafficking here at a greater rate of annual revenue than all pro sports combined?
Jeez.
And we're not notified on it? There's no task force. There's not an agency stood up to confront that. I'm like, everybody's in on it. Not everybody, but I'm thinking to myself, there is a lot of top cover. This is a domestic covert operation run at industrial scale. We have ourselves a serious corruption problem. In addition to the crime, we have a corruption problem that allows this. And sure enough, they're like, yeah, Houston, look at the DA. She will not prosecute child sex crimes. She's a Soros plant. Soros funded her campaign to get her into that seat with the specific agreement that she will not prosecute these kinds of crimes. Oh, and by the way, every other major city, all the big cities, Soros has done that too. I'm like, hold on. Like, hold it. I'm like, what a glaring conflict of interest. How can you allow anyone to fund the campaigns of an official who's to preside over legal proceedings over destructive crimes, harmful crimes of the people, and have him bought with the agreement that he won't prosecute those crimes. That's not in the best interest of the people. I don't care what the crime is. If it's a harmful and destructive crime, we cannot allow anyone to fund the campaign of that judge with any such agreement. So we have DAs, judges, and attorneys general all over our country. I would say probably more than half of them by now. I don't know the percentage. I know that all of the biggest cities have it, but I don't know what the percentage is. But if it was one, it'd be too many.
Yeah.
So we have that. So no wonder, folks, I hope your children don't live in a city where the Soros planted DA, because they're not going to prosecute child rapists and child traffickers. And we have ourselves an industrial scale crime here. And oh, by the way, that's the reason why we don't get what we vote for, no matter which party we're voting for. They're on video raping children at Epstein's Island or at a mansion or at a resort all the way around the world. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were not the only operation, brownstoning operation, intel collection going. They were one of many. And so now that we understand that dynamic exists, we have to just realize we got to get back to electing wholesome, decent reps in all of our official positions who will simply act in good faith. We have to get back to that. So I founded Vets for Child Rescue to expose all that. We're exposing it. We're operating against them and doing all that. But we're having fun doing it, because what's more fun than tearing an evil house down? It's this harming children.
Yeah.
So we laugh, and we do have a great time, because some of the dudes are pretty funny. They're good quality people, and the ladies. Oh, and by the way, I'll just say this and I'll let the next guy talk. I am seeing that ladies have more moral courage than most men. Even more moral courage than a lot of hardened Spec Ops veterans. Because I know a lot of SEAL team operators. I know a lot of them, but there are precious few who will stand up and denounce child rape and child trafficking and pedophilia, and say that it is an abomination and it has to be driven from our nation. But the ladies, the mama bears, they don't hesitate. They'll be, that's wrong, and I'm gonna claw your face off if you don't, stop it.
Right.
So we need more people who will stand up and denounce this, and hound their elected officials to change the laws, enforce the laws, eradicate different agencies that are harming the children and are part of the process, the harmful process. There's a lot of change that's needed. So the good news is you can't swing your coat in any direction without hitting something that can be fixed, and we can all be part of that solution if we just decide to be. That's pretty cool. That's pretty uplifting and empowering, is that we, the people, are to be the solution. We get to be, and the opportunities everywhere.
Yeah. So I had mentioned kind of before we started recording that I'm not a religious person. I'm not a Christian. I'm not Catholic. I'm not any denomination, right? I have my own beliefs, and I believe there is a creator. And I believe that it's it's amazing that we've come to this place where this is not only ongoing at such the scale that you're talking about, but that it's getting to a point where the people are actually trying to, like, instead of just everybody collectively agreeing that this is wrong, it feels like we have to convince people that this is wrong. Like all of the things that are going on in the education system, all of the, the grooming and things that are happening there, you know, and just the sheer number of pedophiles and things like that are trying to be uh medically, I'm not sure if prescribed is the right word, but they're trying to like normalize that whole idea and say that they're minor attracted, which is not a real thing, So like, how do we get to this place where people have that mindset to begin with, and how do we move back the direction that we should be?
Yeah.
Which is
Yes, sir. Okay, so we got here through programming. Everything's programming now. I don't care if it's your apps on your iPhone when you do a search on a search engine. There are all the pop-ups and wallpapering and messaging and news things that are orchestrated. They're very controlled to lead you a certain direction. And it is against your own best interest, all of it. So we have a clash between the forces of good and evil as to whether or not we rise up and overcome all this, or we are drugged down and we get sucked into our own destruction. So after World War II, we brought in a bunch of Nazis. They're rocket scientists and they're psychologists, both of whom had the foremost authority probably on Earth of their skill sets. Psychologists had 6 million people that they could torture to death and exterminate, and God only knows what sort of rituals were conducted between the Nazis, who were deeply into the occult and Satanists. So that's not a secret and it's not a theory. It's documented history, that castle, and they did the ceremonies and all that stuff. So what was the arrangement for them to get the technology to psychologically program people with the Monarch MK Ultra style trauma-based programming that involves torturing children and horrifying them into splitting their minds into schizophrenia, and then programming the different personalities that they split into? Well, that has pervaded our Central Intelligence Agency, our Army PSYOPs units, and who knows how many others. Because sadly, it works. That trauma-based programming works. And what we learned from the propagandists from World War II, the Nazis and the Russians, is how they conditioned their populace to go along with whatever the government wanted them to do. So now that doctrine has infiltrated not only our intelligence community, but big tech, academia. These things have been incorporated into our political institutions, and we're bombed with it 24/7 from all directions. Our Hollywood, the music industry, saturated its programming, accept this one world Marxist government, godless government, and take your slavery without a fight. Right? So it's been since then, since the end of World War II, that we've been conditioned slowly into accepting this. And so how we get out of it, we kind of break the mold, kind of pull out of the matrix, if you will. It's got to do with sharing the truth, vetting your sources, and finding factual evidence that can be proven out, and networking that and sharing that so that lights can start to come back on. We're like, you're right about that one thing. I'm sorry, bro. I harassed you because it sounded crazy 5 years ago, but now half those dudes have been arrested for exactly what you said, and you were talking about this one thing, you were on an op and you saw something I didn't understand, and now it's proven out. And so as we start to learn the truth, we network and we share it, and we go, man, this agenda is actually a real thing, and it's against our best interest. And we start empowering each other. Knowledge is power when you utilize it. So divide and conquer is an old military strategy. It's a well-known one. Why? Because it works.
Definitely.
That's being done to us right now by those whom we pay to represent us. We're being betrayed, being ripped off, we're being lied to. It's painful, and many people cannot face it, but we must. We must find the moral courage to admit it and look at it and go, okay, yeah, it stings, it burns, that this betrayal, but it is what it is, and they have to go. We, the people, have to rise up. We are a constitutional republic if we can keep it, but we're supposed to drive the bus. Right. When we've taken our hands off the bus, the demons have driven it into everything destructive out there. We have to throw the demons out of the bus and start driving it again ourselves, as our founding fathers meant for us to do. So that's how we get back, is we throw the bums out of office. If they're not representing our best interest, they have to go. We have to get active, and then we have to restore truth. And when we start speaking the truth again and having people represent our best interest, the whole pendulum can swing back toward the middle. We can have a more sane, productive society again. But what we have going on right now is an utter assault on everything that makes our nation strong, and it is unsustainable. Absolutely unsustainable.
One thing I noticed too, when you're talking about, it's like when you're saying realizations, oh yeah, and then you caught that. Biggest thing is for people to not feel bad about being called a quote unquote conspiracy theorist, which was a term coined by, I believe, the CIA to denounce any kind of anyone who is thinking critically
Right.
of anything that might be truthful, actual, factual information. You
Mhm.
know, and I always find that there's like three different views. There's one that's actual truth, there's one that is led to be true, and then there is one that is someone has the misinformation. So you have actual information, misinformation, and disinformation. And I think that's one of the hardest parts in today right now because we are bombarded with so much psyops right now
Yeah.
through media and everything like that is trying to get through one of those three types of information. So understanding what is
Mhm.
misinformation, what is the disinformation, what is the actual factual information in life, and understanding that it's okay to be a critical thinker of that manufacturer and to actually ask those questions, and not feel bad about someone else who wants to denounce you, or just to understand that you know what, it's okay. You don't want to open your mind to that and then whatever, and just keep on passing the word on to someone else. And I think it's really important to do so.
You know, vetting your sources is a very, very important thing. So, having worked in the intelligence community and as a federal criminal investigator, I was trained to vet my sources. And vetting means research them, find out where they came from, what makes them tick, motive, right? And their integrity, their accuracy of their product over time. Well, I see a lot of people, and maybe well-meaning. I think a lot of them are paid opposition, but people under the banner of patriots or Christians are attacking those who are actually in the fight and making mad progress against evil. They're saying, "Oh, this person's a horrible, he's their secret life, and he's really something different." I'm like, that's utterly insane. In fact, when the person's life demonstrates the exact opposite, and the actions that he's done and sacrificed all paint the same picture, you can't say that person's led an alternate life and he's really someone else.
Mhm.
That's not rational. So when somebody claims something, especially online, I think it's really important for us all to learn the discipline, the basic discipline of looking at, okay, where's the source?
Mhm.
Who is this person? What is their motive for making this seemingly outlandish claim? Oh, well, they were an agency person, that they're a whistleblower and they are part of this program and they have factual evidence to prove it out and they're highly respected for it. Okay, well, then the heck, that might be a pretty good source. Or no, this person's been in and out of a psych ward. Nothing they've ever claimed has been demonstrated. And in fact, it's been constantly proven false with factual evidence by good people who have no axe to grind, but they're just saying, hey, I'm sorry, this person isn't legit. So we really need to get into that ethic because I see so many people led astray and they're harming good people online by attacking them. Yeah, get him. See people say that he's this or that. And it's like, wait a minute, there's nothing real about that. Stop attacking the good guys on hearsay online because it's caught momentum in a certain thread of the
Mhm.
people that are just entertaining themselves. So
Yeah.
vet your sources, folks. Research and see what their accuracy is over time and make careful assessments. And that's how we can kind of help define or decipher truth from misinformation or disinformation.
Yeah. So there's something, it's a term that I refer to as incremental surrender. And it is that like you give up something that seems really minor, and so you're willing to just say, yeah, okay, that's not a big deal, and you just kind of go with it, right? But eventually this gets to a point where you really surrendered all of your personal freedoms, your liberty, your decision making abilities, all these things, and you do it in such a way that you don't even realize that it's happening.
Boiling frog.
Right, exactly. And so there's so much of that goes on, not just in this country, but all over the world, but here in particular, because things have become so easy for us that I think most people are just content just to like take whatever they're hearing on the news or whatever other media source they pay attention to,
Yeah.
and just accept that. And even the things that they feel aren't quite right, it's like it's that little thing. It's like they're willing just to let that go and not say anything about it or not give that some more thought, that it just passes and eventually you get to this point. And so Kevin is an excellent example of that. You don't just allow the company that you work for, no matter how vested you are in it, just to say, by the way, we're going to like take away, all of the things that you're here for. This is the reason why you're invested in this company,
Yeah.
is to, you know, and just be okay with it.
Well, so I have another example of that. So when all the COVID stuff was going on. I mean,
Mhm.
that's an example right there of us giving
Right.
up freedoms incrementally, a little bit here, a little bit there. People are so content to just not be bothered, like the path of least resistance, right?
Right.
I would have never guessed that a lot of things happened in Arizona would have been able to happen until
Mhm.
I saw it unfold with my own eyes. And I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, I just can't believe how people are just sitting back and this is just going on and no one's really doing anything, even the election. I don't want to go there, but right now on the podcast, but it's like, really?
Mhm.
Like, we all know there was corruption, but nobody really did anything. We kind of
Right.
waited to see if somebody was going to make it right and they never did. And
Mhm.
I don't think anybody's really satisfied with how things went, but at my kid's school, um, they said they're going to be wearing masks to school, and I'm like, no, my kids are not going to be wearing masks.
Mhm.
And as I started to uncover why I said, okay, so my kids aren't going to be at school if they have to wear a mask.
Mhm.
It's my right as a father. Then the school came back and said, well, no, don't do that. And then I'm like, well, why did they care so much if my kids weren't going to be there?
Right.
You know, why are they even I would have assumed they
Because
would have just said
they
fine.
lose money.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
going to go into that. So what I found was, every day our kids are at school, the school gets the payment for those days that the kids are in school. When they're not in school, it's like um, what do I want to say? It's like a per diem almost, right?
Mhm.
So your kids miss school. There's a per diem that the school doesn't collect. And so they said, well, no, don't do that. So I said, okay, well, I'm telling you, if my kids are going to wear masks, they're not going to school.
Mhm.
So I think I kept them home for a day or two.
Mhm.
The third day, I called the school and I said, hey, I need to talk to your legal team because they had sent a letter home that said it has to be signed by a doctor and pastor, both, not one or the other.
Okay.
So first, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm a Christian, but not everyone goes to church, so not everyone even has a pastor.
Right.
So this doesn't make sense. Second of all, my doctor's not my kid's guardian,
Mhm.
and neither is my pastor.
Right.
So I called the school and I said, I need to talk to your lawyer. I said, I will sign this form that says my kid doesn't have to wear a mask because I'm their guardian, I'm their
Right.
father. I said, if you need their mom to sign it, we'll both sign it.
Mhm.
But we don't need a pastor or a doctor to tell our kids if they can go to school without a mask.
Mhm.
And so finally, I was back and forth in email, and the lawyer finally said, fine, I'll send you this form. So I signed it. Next day, kids didn't wear a mask to school. I went to school. Everything worked out fine. So the next day, printed off hundreds of these things and took them to the school with me. And I was handing them out to all of the people that were coming.
Mhm. Right.
Next day, there was like 3 kids wearing a mask.
Hmm.
And so I
Awesome.
think it's just little stuff like that, right? Like I didn't have to get involved with the
Mhm.
lawyer. I didn't have to stand up to the school.
Mhm.
But I think it's a lot easier, right, than I think we make it out to be. Like we think we can't do anything and we just have to force to this sucks and we got to suffer the consequences of agencies in our government enforcing these regulations on us, and we're like, it doesn't make sense, it's not fair, but what are we going to do about it, right?
Right.
And I
That right there
That.
is the type of
Mhm.
moral courage that I was saying mama bears have
yeah,
been doing.
yeah,
Good on you for that.
yeah.
Look, there's more than
My
one way
wife
to
was,
fight for your
hey,
country.
kudos to my wife, dude. And I'm just going to throw this out there because she was so instrumental in how I was receiving all the things that were happening during COVID. Like you just said, the mama bear, my wife was way more hostile about this stuff than I was.
Right.
And I got a huge pat on the back from my wife, which, I'd do anything to get a pat on the back from my wife. I love her
Mhm.
to death. But um, my wife was really hostile about this stuff. And so she kind of motivated me to like, oh, you're right. Like, we don't have to sit here and do all this. So
Mhm.
that just to your guys' point, like, what can we do? We can do something. We
Yeah.
can start figuring out why things are this way. And you were mentioning critical thinking, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's so simple, but we tend to overlook things. Like, it just hit me like brick in the face. Like, wait a minute. Why do I have to get these signatures from people that have nothing to do with my kids? You know what I mean? Um, It's crazy. And it's programming, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
a friend of mine, Boone Cutler, co-wrote a book with General Flynn called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. And they talk about how our country is being overthrown without a single shot fired.
yeah,
That's the nature of this type of warfare. So that is war. You are making war. There's more than one way to fight for your country. And that was an example of fighting back. And it is effective because it rocks the bureaucrats back. They're not used to being challenged.
yeah,
That's why there was such a big panic about January 6th. They weren't used to anybody saying, hey, what are you doing? Armed insurrection, right?
yeah,
Massive, wild overreaction and panic while they, riots and looting and burning elsewhere, not a problem because it wasn't their house,
yeah.
right? It didn't come to them. So I celebrate that, man. That's that. When we start figuring that out, the momentum can start changing real quick. We start flipping a couple, figuratively speaking, flipping a couple money changers tables over.
Mm-hmm.
They start realizing they're going to be confronted and held accountable. And it's not just going to be a one-way freight train over us.
Well, and it's like that was about money, right? Our kids,
Yeah.
me keeping my kids home was about the school not getting paid, which is why they were willing to bargain with us.
But you found
And
their leverage point and the
right,
greed, the money.
but like what you're dealing with, it's all about money, right? Somebody's getting paid to
Yeah.
keep these things a secret. They're all making money on trafficking, and that's why it's hard to detect. It's because it's being suppressed because it has to do with money. It's really sad. When we start to peel back the layers of everything, things that are happening to our kids, the things that, like wrongs that are being done to our country, all the things that keep coming out, it's all about money.
It's all about the
Well,
passive.
money's what pushes a lot of people.
Yeah.
But with the child trafficking, that's feeding people that want to destroy
Oh,
children
yeah,
for
that's demonic.
spiritual purposes that get them wealth and power. Yeah,
Right.
they're greedy for that position of power and influence,
Mhm.
and they'll be part of those secret clubs and secret societies to get that,
Yeah.
and they'll sacrifice children for the dark side to get them and keep them those positions of power. It's just so disappointing when you see what mankind will resort to
Mhm.
for a dollar, so to speak. It's
Mhm.
just really is weak.
Yeah.
I was also saying is I feel like there's been a lot more like an awakening in this past 3 years. And anyway,
Mhm.
I've never been seeing so many of my family so politicized this
Right.
past 3 years, or actually not just political, but just more constitutionalist and where they want to keep America as it should be, like you said, from being dismantled from the inside.
Mhm.
The father-in-law says like China was wants to take over America without shooting a single shot.
Yeah.
There's so many bad things over there. I mean, we have farmlands that are owned by China and stuff like that. And there's
Right.
been recently, like you said, a small thing. There was it Missouri or Mississippi or something like that? I forget. They literally changed the locks. The locksmith came and changed the locks to
Yeah.
this town hall where they were gonna, some Chinese were gonna buy like 100 acres of farmland or something. They said, no, you guys aren't going in there to allow that to happen. So they changed the locks, the door. Just simple thing like that.
Hmm.
Stop a huge buyout,
Right.
and I think it's kind of scary for a lot of people because they don't want to get in trouble. There's that fear of persecution from their own government, or they're going to get on a list or something like that. They're scared, like, oh, is the FBI watching me now? They think I'm some sort of extremist or something like that. And yeah, a lot of people are thinking, and it's already coming to light that people are the critical thinkers or that are making actions, not necessarily in a small foothold from a school standpoint, but that guy who changed the lock to keeping $100 million, sale go through.
Hmm.
I mean, I get scared from doing stuff like that, but it takes those mama bears to really make those things happen in today's
Yeah, yeah. Think about it.
life.
Decent people. We want to color inside the lines,
Right.
right? We want to be law-abiding citizens.
Right.
It's a harmonious society that we enjoy living in, want to raise our kids in. It's only once we start to see that those who enforce the laws or write the laws have turned against us and against our best interest and are utterly hostile. And then we start listening to the World Economic Forum, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Conference, and what they're talking about and what they're bringing out about. Oh, yeah, yeah, we want genocide. Yeah, we want to eradicate whatever, 90% of the world's population. We're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
where does that leave us? Because There's not enough time for us to die off and meet your timeline.
Yeah.
And what's your great reset? It involves bankrupting our country so that we'll give it up without a fight, just like Yuri Bezmenov, the Russian KGB defector, talked about. Ideological subversion, infiltrate all of our institutions, bomb us with rhetoric and propaganda, and conditioning us, program us so that we'll give up our country without a shot fired.
Mhm.
I'm 60 years old now. I feel like I'm about 1,000, but I'm 60 years old. And before I was even born, the list of the 45 communist goals to overthrow the United States without firing a single shot was read before Congress. Read before Congress, and we didn't stop it. And it will raise the hair on your neck when you read this. It's online. Anybody that listens to this, type in 45 communist goals in any search engine, and it'll read the lists that pop up. It's a probably 63 or 64-year-old document that we'd recovered, and it talks about infiltrating both parties, infiltrating the academia, discrediting our founding fathers as being elitists and weirdos and hostile. Um, get rid of God at all costs. Get rid of that creator and that central belief and faith that holds us all together. Hammer the flag and the patriotism. Get rid of that because that's a unifying thing. And the family unit, the loving mother and father that raise well grounded and secure children, shatter that. Get rid of the father figure. Pay the woman to have children out of wedlock so that the children end up in prison and society starts to be torn down. So it's all been systematically played against us, and we've just been so wealthy in this incubator of liberty and freedom and wealth, right? We've been so insulated and this refuge
Comfortable.
and so comfortable and benefiting from what men and women buried in Arlington Cemetery and other cemeteries all around the world fought for, and we're taking it for granted. And now our enemies are capitalizing on that and are taking it from us, and we're allowing them. So we have to wake the heck up. And I do believe, as you do, I've seen an awakening over this last several years. Like, how bad can it get? Well, they're going to take everything unless we stop them. And so that's the healthy awakening that the populace, is enjoying. And then you have these mama bears at school board meetings asking, why are you teaching my elementary school child such vulgar and vile sexual content with hairy, sweaty men grinding on my kindergartner and drag queen story hour with content that I cannot post on Facebook as a mother, or I would be thrown off for inappropriate and um, vulgar material. Why are you teaching that to my child? And why are you keeping it a secret from me? And then why does the FBI call her a domestic terrorist?
Right.
Right? When
About.
you see that, you see a sickness that goes very deep into our institutions, and it's been worked into that. So we have to clean house at the top of the FBI. We have to eradicate, some of these school boards that are just full of weirdos and psychopaths that'll do anything for a dollar, and they'll bring in this content that's harmful for our children. So it's just a healthy process of waking up, going and participating, and saying, "Hey, you over there doing the weird thing, you're out. We're going to replace you with someone who's sane and healthy and wholesome." And brings projects that are productive and in our best interest, rather than this insanity that we're suffering this last few years.
So, how can we get involved with, or how can anyone get involved with Veterans for Child Rescue or helping what you guys are doing?
With our org, man, we've really loaded our website up to be a one-stop shop. So v4cr.org. So phonetically Victor, the number 4, Charlie Romeo.org is our website. And you can go there, and we've got all kinds of tools that empower you. You love people, you want them empowered. Knowledge is power. So we put tools, information, how to safeguard your children, how to get into their smart devices and see who's stalking them, who's tracking them, and all of that kind of stuff. Get that out of their devices, make them smart so that they're looking after their own best interest and safety. They can help by volunteering. They can help by buying our merch and our coffee. Our Rescue Roast coffee is epic.
There you go.
Yeah, it's organic. It's a local roaster here. They're fantastic. And it's just stuff like that. So really everything's on there. The website, v4cr.org. And watch Contraland, our documentary. Very powerful, very factual. It shows you what we are able to learn in the first 3 years of Founding Vets for Child Rescue, of what child trafficking looks like and what we were able to do as far as um, interviews and law enforcement joint operations and the arrests that we made, and the experts like Jack Farmer, the real Jack Ryan from the Tom Clancy series. He's a friend. He's on our board, and some others like Judith Reisman. Talk about a mama bear. Judith Reisman spent 50 years dogging Alfred Kinsey, the CIA funded fake scientist who tried to normalize child rape. He went around politicking very actively, all 50 states, to try to make it seem normal to rape a child. And he paid prisoners to rape boys around the clock. And there's just some very sick and vulgar stuff involved with his falsified studies. And the Kinsey Institute is still a recipient of multi-million-dollar grants and donations to this day. He's still celebrated in our universities as the father of the sexual revolution, but he is a sick, sadomasochistic child rapist. He belonged in an institution, and we need to go back and revise and replace his false studies with actual science. Right now, countless generations of children, children have been harmed over the last few generations since that. So,
Academia is still used.
yeah, oh yeah, that it's still considered truth. And so I think we need to have the courage and the discipline and the professionalism to go back and say, okay, Kinsey was whacked. Let's find out how it really is and replace his whacked out, abusive, probably demonic notions with what actually is scientifically.
Mhm. So I kind of wanted to go back to something that you had touched on earlier, the whole idea of critical thinking. So our education system, from its very inception, the foundation of it was created for the idea that we wanted to make people that were more productive workers, that they would, kind of fit into a mold, go to factories and do what they needed to do, and stop being part of the agricultural system, right? So again, from the very beginning, it was created with the wrong idea in mind. It was not meant to teach people to think critically or to like be to find ways to be more prosperous for themselves. It was all for, the betterment of, you know, the organizations and companies, the industrial revolution that was happening, all of those things to empower the people that were already in power, right?
Absolutely.
So not only with all of the things that are going on now, more than ever, we need people that are willing to stand up and say, this needs to change. Like the education system is broken at its core, at its very foundation. And if we don't do something to rebuild it in the way that it is beneficial for us, not the government and not for the state, you know, this will just continue. We can't allow this to continue to propagate. So we need people that are willing to stand up and say, this is wrong, and start thinking differently about how we teach our children.
What's inspiring to me is to see people find their own ways to make a mark, just like that, finding out from an attorney, then writing up papers and going and empower all the other parents to do the same for their children. That's a beautiful thing. And there's people all over the country figuring out ways to push back in a really respectable and inspiring way. And I champion that. I celebrate that. It's that's the human spirit shining. And you're like, yeah, that. More of what she's doing, more of what he's doing. That's cool, right?
Right.
So look, fear is contagious, but also so is courage.
Yeah.
When somebody
Absolutely.
gets ticked off in a battle, it's like he switches on and it starts bringing it. It's inspiring for everybody else to go, well, don't let him do it by himself. Let's cover him. Next thing you know, you're standing over your enemy's position, and there's just a bunch of smoking bodies, and you're like, well, we've won the day. That's cool, and I think we could do that here. I know we can. So you see somebody fighting, see somebody rising up and speaking truth, rally around them, support them, and it will grow. It needs to.
Right.
A lot of people think it's you got to start at the top, but really it's all at the base.
Yeah.
It's all at the base bottom, at the very bottom of the hill. You can't get to the mountain just knock over the king of the hill that easy. it's doing what you're doing, Kevin, from the school point.
Oh, and you too. I was actually thinking that question was kind of a good transition for us. So like I was just thinking about what you want to do to help veterans and responders, and we had similar goals we had talked about at the Santan show when we met, and so I've been praying for like 2 or 3 years for some kind of ministry opportunity, and God has continued to say, not yet, not yet, not yet. And I even was praying about closing down my knife business to become a pastor. And God kept saying, "This isn't what I want you to do." And so I've learned to listen more as I've gotten older and, gotten closer to Him and done my studies. And so I said, okay. And just the other day, I had a couple of, I have a two, well, one really solid veteran that works with me. He's 100% disabled. And I have another guy as a friend of his. And basically, they called me up a couple weeks ago and they said, hey, we don't want to get paid. We just want to come out to your shop and do some work and help you out. We're just bored, and
Yeah.
it put a thing in my head like, oh my gosh, like if I was 100% disabled and I couldn't work, like they can't have a job because it voids
Yeah.
their disability
Me
payment.
too.
Yeah, and so like they can't have a job, they can't earn money, but they want to be productive. And like I think the worst thing you could do to any human, right? But then now we're talking about men, and then we're talking about like the guys I work with. I just work with men, and so we're talking about men, and then we're talking about not being able to earn income, and then also being military. It's like, what else can we take away from these guys? Like we're in the
Right.
military, we're trained to work hard.
Mhm.
um, we have that camaraderie that we just completely lose once we exit the military. And I don't think a lot of civilians really know what that feels like. But until I got into the knife community, I had lost my camaraderie, except for, once in a while I would meet another veteran, or we talk on Messenger or text or something like that to some of my old buddies. But then you get married and then it's hard, right? Like you just don't have the time that you used to. But what I saw, these guys came out to my shop and they were working and they were just like loving life, and I'm seeing smiles and all this. And God's like, you're going to minister to these guys. Like your ministry is going to be rounding these guys up. You were mentioning one of the goals is destroy the family unit. And part of the family unit is some of these guys, been divorced or gone through PTSD, gone through hell, and they don't know how to relate to their significant other, or, how to communicate how they feel, demoralized, or taking your manhood away when you can't really be a provider anymore. There's so many emotions, and God's like, you're going to round these guys up, you're going to minister to them, you guys are going to work together, you're going to do something. And I said, well, I'd love to have these guys making knives, not for my benefit though. I want it to be for something that they're like, oh, I enjoy this, right? And so like, how cool would it be to have these guys forging and learning a craft? And then I met Sutton, and he's like, oh, I teach these guys how to forge knives. And God's like, that's who I want you to team up with, this guy right here. And it
Right.
was just this feeling that, went from me to him. And Sutton's like, man, I got recharged, and we started talking. And so we haven't even sorted out the details yet. It's fun. It's
Mhm.
hilarious. Sutton and I just met, and I'm like, you
Right.
got to come to this podcast. Um, and I said, Craig Sawyer's going to be there. Rico invited me, and, want this podcast to be a little more deep,
Right.
and so I see this as a way for, I'm so busy, I don't have time to teach all these guys how to forge, and
Mhm.
so to have somebody to like give these guys to Sutton and say, hey, do your thing however often you want, right? And Sutton's, well, your one thing you had said earlier when you introduced yourself, you're like, yeah, I could only handle before one or two guys a month, and now I feel like I'm more open. Well, like he doesn't even have to look for people now because I got so many people that I'm in contact.
Right.
Like I guarantee every guy watching this podcast that's a veteran or a first responder is going to be like, "Oh man, sign me up!" Right?
Yeah.
So hit up Rico. You can hit me up. So again, I'm Kevin Moore. I'll just give. Can I give my cell phone? All right. So
Yeah.
best way to contact me is my cell phone. Just text 623-521-3495. My website's m3tacticaltech.com. And yeah, I'll be referring guys over to Sutton and working with him. And I want to come to your forging class and make a chef knife.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
absolutely.
So
Well, I
Oh,
want to ask you, knife maker, something.
yeah,
yeah.
Why is it, because this seems unfair, why is it that forging a signature is bad, but forging a knife is good? What is the deal with that?
you're kind of taking credit for somebody else's work.
Yeah.
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 All right, sorry, bad humor moment. Moving on.
We had nothing to say.
Yeah.
About suicide prevention though. I have two thoughts on that,
Yeah.
and maybe this can spark another aspect of what you're doing. Because number one, I don't see any of the takers in D.C. Those who are ruining our country. I do not see any of them taking their own lives. It is never the people who are ruining everything for everybody we
Yeah.
served to protect. It is never those people who are ruining it all and taking everything for themselves who are taking their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's the givers,
Mhm.
it's the protectors
Mm-hmm.
that are taking their own lives. I'm like, my gosh, you imagine how different it would be instead of 20 veterans a day taking their own lives, 20 of those takers in DC taking their own lives that are ruining everything. My, what a different world that would be
Yeah.
just in a couple of weeks. So, number one, we need you. We need patriots. We need veterans and leaders in this country. You're needed. And number two, if we disrupt the process, we are never to take our own lives, ever, never, ever, because it denies our creator the redemption story. There's always a redemption possible. And many times those are the most beautiful stories ever, is when you thought hope was lost, the obstacles seem so big, you can't see around it, you can't see under it or through it. And you're like, I just can't. Well, guess what? He can.
Yeah.
He can.
Yeah.
And he wants to. And when you give it to him and he brings you through it, it inspires and it changes lives of countless people around you. All who observe it go, okay, that was impossible
Yeah.
and it's cool.
Yeah.
So never deny your creator that redemption story to bring you up and out of it through it, because there's always hope.
Yeah.
So those are the two thoughts I had
Yeah.
on that. So I celebrate people who are fighting for their veterans who are finding themselves in situations that they think are just too dark and they can't see a way to pull through.
And there's
And
a
that,
place for that.
yeah.
It's called Save a Warrior. Really, saveawarrior.org. I mean, really, that's the place to go. Apply. It's free for any veteran who wants to go. It's a 72-hour inpatient, super intensive program. It's not a kumbaya anything. I went there one time before when I was super suicidal back in 2015. I was doing everything balls to the wall. And I attempted suicide 2 times. Was unsuccessful. Ended up in
Okay.
the seventh floor of the VA building and stuff, and turned my life around when I went there. It's amazing. The When I went there it was a lot longer. They've condensed it into a shorter time period now, but I think I don't want to really shoot the wrong numbers, but I think out of 2,000 uh warriors who've gone through Save a Warrior,
Hmm.
they've only like had 3 people commit suicide,
Wow.
Wow.
Fantastic.
which is
That's
incredible.
incredible. Yeah.
I mean, the ratio. I mean, God forbid you want any, but for the numbers' sake,
Hmm.
it's an outstanding ratio. And what I learned especially is having a purpose and finding something else. It's like getting outside. That's one thing that was kind of difficult too. Is when you're talking about it, I'm thankful that especially hearing this outlet, that people are going to be able to hear it and understand it, because otherwise I'm just knocking on the door. They got some random dude coming to a police station and say, "Hey, bring your cops over and let's make knives." It's like,
Yeah.
What?
Right.
It's a trap.
It's like a trap, man.
Get your hand where we can see it.
Like it's kind of weird, so there was no real good way to. I sent you the brochure that I
Yeah,
made before,
yeah,
but that was just recently. I made that brochure when I was in Texas, and
yeah.
that actually worked because my buddies posted up in their police departments, and then they're like, then I was getting calls and stuff like that, and then
Yeah.
that makes more sense than me just knocking on
Yeah.
the
Right.
door like, hey, do you guys want to make knives? Like,
Mhm.
so, but yeah, it's definitely, man, suicide's no joke. I've had probably about 8 friends in the past 10 years who committed suicide out of like
Mhm.
3 companies I was in.
Wow.
Wow.
So, and just I had one, last one probably about 2 weeks ago. It was one of my platoon sergeants.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it was that guy was just doing coke and drinking like crazy, and I'm pretty sure he just OD'd. So,
Right.
and it sucks, man, because I just want to, I don't know. Everybody wants to do what they can to keep their people from doing
Mhm.
that to themselves.
Right.
So, and having an outlook or having some sort of connection or doing something, because you got these veterans sitting on their ass all day long.
Right.
Me, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I can't work because if I do, then I lose my pension.
Right.
And so here I am, a stay-at-home dad, just waiting for I just moved here back to Arizona, like I said, probably just November. I don't have a shop yet, so
Mhm.
I just been twiddling my thumbs and just
Yeah.
God put Kevin in my place. So here we are.
So
It's a good thing I'm a loudmouth, right?
yeah. So there are two things that I mean, I've never attempted suicide. I've never had that sort of idea, right? But just to my way of thinking, there are two things if you wanted to ensure that sort of outcome for somebody, is you take away their purpose, you take away their hope, right?
Yeah.
So the things that you're doing, it alleviates at least one of those components. It's like you're giving them a purpose, you're giving them a reason to be doing something,
Mhm.
which they no longer have because you've stripped it away from them, and you can't survive as a person if you don't have an actual purpose, if you don't have a mission.
No,
Jocko talks about that. Like when you leave the military, and you decide to come back to be a civilian again, you need to find a new mission. Whatever that turns into for you, your job, your family, some other passion thing that you take part in, religion, whatever that is, you know, you need to find that. That's the thing that's going to keep you going.
mhm,
And you need to never lose hope that there is something better. Even if you don't understand what that is and you can't see it, you need to understand that it is there.
no,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a confidence builder too, right? Like a lot of these guys don't think they have any worth left or their confidence is shot, you know. You're sitting around doing nothing for a long time, it starts to sink in.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, I had this bar of steel. Like,
Mhm.
mentally look at that steel the way it is right now. Remember this, and then of
Mhm.
course I bring back another piece of steel. It looks exactly like that, but I'm just saying, while we're making this, look, just think about what this is and what's going to happen,
Right.
and they're shocked at the end of it when they have their knife in their hands, and it's just gorgeous. I'm just coaching them all the way through. I mean,
Mhm.
they're mainly doing everything. I show them proper techniques so they don't hurt themselves while they're hammering or grinding and stuff like that. But everything else in itself, it's all on them. I
Mhm.
just say, well, I want to make this kind of knife. I'm like, really, dude? Just let the steel take its form. I know that's what you're
Right.
talking about. It's like, well, they never make me a knife I want. Like, dude, just trust me, man. If you try to command the steel to do something that you want it to do, this is your first time forging, man. Just let it happen. Okay,
Right.
just trust me. Just let it happen.
Mhm.
You'll be a lot less frustrated in the end.
Mhm.
So, and then they're like, wow, dude, this turned out great. And so it's just,
Well,
I didn't know I could do this.
it helps you. So I was having this conversation with Craig the other day in his backyard on the patio. We were talking about making things, and because our creator is a maker, right? Like I think it's anytime we make something with our hands or we, build something. I used to build houses with my dad, and it was like the biggest joy to see this crap piece of land with all this desert brush everywhere, get cleared out and become a house for somebody. And to see that go up and to walk away from that project knowing that, wow, like stand back and look at this was something that we made with our hands, And when you get done building anything, you just have this, I think, deeper connection with our creator because we are made in his image, right? And so we can't like make something conjure up out of nothing, but we can take what he's given us and make different things. And it's just such a deeper connection, I think, for me, it is, guess if you're not a Christian, it might not make sense, but for me, it's a deeper connection with God when I can stand back and look at something that I made and say, wow, it's just a different feeling that you don't get from anywhere else. It's like when I go out to the mountains and I look at creation, I'm like, wow, it's just a deeper connection with God. And I feel like I get a different kind of connection with God when I make something. And I really hope that, that inspires other guys that come to the class just to have some kind of that purpose that you were talking about,
Mhm.
right? Like, hopefully, eventually, I hope they find their purpose in God. But
Yeah.
for now, if they find it in making something, it's just anything to get these guys to kind of, like you said, I don't want them to be distracted and then go right back to what they were in before, but to show them that there's meaning to their life, and
Yeah.
that they can accomplish something. And that's the other thing, right? Like we accomplished so much in the military, I think. Like we sat around and waited a lot, but
Yeah.
we were on missions, and you get the sense of accomplishment and teamwork. I think back to basic training, man, when we had all these guys that we didn't know each other, and you know probably didn't like each other that much, and or even know what the heck was going on. But you put us through basic training, you get us out onto base, and we go on a mission together, and you just have so much purpose. And then you come out of that and you go 100% disabled, and you're not getting that uh that high anymore, I guess you could call it, from accomplishing tasks, and it's just you get that from doing work, just from doing any kind of work. But I think knife making, I know, I tell everyone, they're like, I want to start making knives. I'm like, it's a black hole, dude.
Oh man.
It's like consume you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know that there's a lot of and then I mean, come on, they're military guys, right? Like, what's cooler than making a knife? And I agree with you. Kitchen knife. Teach them that knives are for something other than what we use them for in the military or tactical or whatever. Like, even first responders,
Hmm.
they deal with a lot of messy situations involving knives, and giving them something that they can actually put in their hand and use to make happy memories, right? Like making
Exactly.
meals and
Hmm.
cooking for themselves, getting their health better, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, man.
Me too.
I took my son to a father-son camping event in Indiana several years ago, and I showed him my David Beck tracker knife
Yeah, you got a
combo,
cool set.
and I was teaching him a little bit of how to use it and what some of the features were, and he was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." So that's another way that they can be used productively as far as survival or camping kind of applications that I think can be really really cool. So I look forward to the day when I hand that off officially to the man cub and go, all right, this is yours now, right? And you're the saw man now,
Yeah,
you know, because it's got saw man, it's stamped into the back of the blade, pretty deep, and
yeah,
it's an awesome blade. I don't know what it's worth now, but
yeah,
probably 10 grand or something. Those are crazy, but I look forward to handing that to him. Those heirlooms. What a great tool.
yeah,
Mhm.
I can make bows and arrows, and with that, I can hunt.
yeah,
I can make
exactly.
shelter with it.
Yeah,
I can skin game and process whatever I want. It's just a great tool. So,
Where is your main shop located?
so it's on Cactus and I-17, and Landon McWilliams is our machinist. It's in his garage right now. So we're currently building a facility in Wyoming that's about 4,400 square feet with 20-foot ceilings. It's massive. So he's actually going to be moving all of our equipment up there. And then I have just a small shop in Marana, in a big steel building, um, where I can do one-off customs. I can customize some of our run knives and stuff like that, and make knives. And I got tumblers there and a blast cabinet, all the stuff I need, air compressor, grinder,
Did you?
heat. I can do some Cerakote if I want to.
Nice.
not anything I like to do, but
Right.
yeah, I got
So
my
I assume you
laser.
have like even heats, or is that how you mainly do all your heat
No, so
treatings?
actually we use Phoenix heat treat for our heat treat.
Oh,
Is
really?
that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
outsource it then to?
Yeah, we outsource our heat treat to
Okay.
Phoenix Heat Treat. They do some aerospace heat treating and
Okay.
they're local.
Yeah.
And so when we send off our blades, they give us the exact hardness, plus it goes through a
That's
cryogenic
sick.
treatment.
Oh, they cryo treat it
They
too.
cryo treat them too.
Nice.
And I
Okay.
cryo treat everything. So
Nice.
I'm gonna nerd out for a minute, but
Yeah,
like
please.
they tell you, yeah,
I'm
like
excited.
1095 doesn't need a cryo. Well, it
Right.
doesn't need a cryo, but it sure works really great when you do a cryo.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we cryo every steel that we make knives with, and we have everything professionally heat treated. So
Yeah.
we have a process. I order my steel through Niagara Specialty Metals. It then comes to us. So they actually laser cut our blanks. It comes to us. We do all of like our chamfering and,
Hmm.
any holes that have to go in the handles and stuff like that. We actually send our run knives off to Larkin Precision. They do all the bevel grinding. And then well, actually it goes to heat treat first. Then it goes to Larkin Precision, then back to us, and we sharpen them. While it's gone, we have a CNC router to do our handles, and then we have companies that do things like black PVD. We don't do our black PVD coating. We have somebody else do that.
Yeah.
We either make our own hardware or we have another company make our own hardware,
Are
make
you,
our custom
are you
hardware.
talking about the diamond coat?
Sorry, PVD.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know what it stands for. It's PVD
Yeah.
coating. Yeah. So that's how we currently make our runs.
Okay.
When we get our shop set up in Wyoming, we will start to bring more processes in-house, but right now we don't have the space. Like we want to get a Swiss lathe to do all of our hardware in-house. And currently with everything in his garage, there's no way we could possibly bring he actually has a surface grinder sitting at his old job. He used to work for Marco Crane.
Hmm.
So our surface grinder's sitting over at Marco Crane right now
Okay.
in Phoenix, waiting for us to have a place to put it. So yeah,
Yeah.
eventually. I think the only thing we probably won't bring in house anytime soon would be the heat treat. So we want to get Blanchard and double disc grinders to do bevels before we ever think about heat treat because when you heat treat on a big, large quantity level, doesn't really cost enough money for us to think about doing it. And not only that, but we'd have to also learn how to do all that stuff.
Right.
You know,
I've
it's
seen a
just a
book
big
3 inches
process.
thick just on heat treating, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a science in
It's the
itself.
most important part of
It
the
is.
process.
It really is.
And when you're doing, oh, and we use a lot of super steels too. So
Yeah.
when you're doing super steel, they have to be a cryo. And
Hmm.
I don't want to be cryoing in my garage with liquid nitrogen and doing halfway job of that,
Yeah.
you know.
So
So
do you have any forges? And I mean, you have
no,
no.
we don't have any forge. So we don't do any forging.
No, I've seen your knives. They definitely look.
Yeah,
I mean, they're clean.
yeah, they're
They're
clean.
really
Yeah,
clean.
yeah. I have a
Um,
lot of respect for guys that forge because it's, when I got into knife making, I was watching a video by another knife maker and he said something really funny that made me realize I wasn't going to be forging. He said, if you want to have fun and have a hobby, you forge. If you want to put diapers on your kids, you machine. So, it's like if I want to make 100 sheaths,
right.
fit 100 knives, I either have to send all 100 knives that are slightly different to a sheath maker because we don't even do our sheaths. Matt Nichols does our Kydex,
Right.
Lance Nixon does our leather. And so I send Matt Nichols 14 knives. He molds all of our 100, 200 sheaths, whatever it is, and then sends them back and they all fit perfectly. And
I see.
before we started machining, we couldn't machine handles because all the handles were slightly different. And so those didn't marry up and it was a nightmare. And so Landon, or the machinist, he's like, no, we're going to start doing more and more stuff in house. And then we outgrew our garage. So we're kind of busting at the seams. You can walk in there, but barely, you
Yeah.
know. And we have a couple lasers so we can do our own laser engraving and stuff like that. But put logos on stuff without having to send that out. But yeah,
We want to talk about the Sawman knife,
Yeah,
or will we
we
wait?
can. I wanted you to bring it up. I didn't know if you wanted to bring it up, but yeah, so Craig brought me a design. It's pretty amazing, I think. You can talk about it a little bit, and then I'll kind of
Well, I don't want to. With the rifle design, we keep having people trying to steal what we've been doing for the
yeah,
last decade on that,
yeah.
because we've even had a major DoD contractor try to sell it to the Army to get the Army's contract with the exact look of the rifle that I created. That
Wow.
a venture capitalist out of Fort Worth that we'd pitched it to sold it to that defense contractor for, it wasn't his, it was my design. He sold it to him for unknown sum of money. So we'll sort all that out later. But
Yeah.
I got to be learn to be careful with it. So it's a skeletonized combat blade that I wish I'd had as a dev group operator, because ounces make pounds, pounds make pain.
Mhm.
Especially as a sniper, man, you get a 120-pound rucksack on routinely, plus another 50 pounds of kit and main weapon and sidearm and all that stuff, where it's just everything's got to be skeletonized to keep from just blowing out your knees. So um, I kind of designed this and sketched it over a few different years and went back and forth with a few friends of mine and figured out, okay, how can I make this thing be as useful as possible, have as many utilities as possible, but not make it weird or awkward like an enduro is, like as a motocross racer. And a friend taught me how to road race. He was a pro road racer on motorcycles, and both of those awesome motorcycles are awesome. And enduro is supposed to do both, but it's kind of not good at either.
Yeah.
So I want to make an enduro knife, you know what I mean? So I worked on making it like a legit knife that you can fight with, and it's got a lot of tools on, although no moving parts,
Mhm.
and a lot of tools that you can solve a lot of problems with when you're on an op. And there's no time, and you have to fasten or undo something or whatever. It's got those kind of features. So I think I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
There's a few different versions of it for guys that have different hand sizes and different needs,
Yeah.
different preferences. But it's I think showing it to enough operators, and even SWAT operators domestically, they're like, "Oh, dude, let me know when these are up. I'm gonna have them on my kit
Yeah.
day one." I'm like, okay, that's encouraging. So
Yeah. Anytime you can do something for the military, we're giving them one thing and you can do lots of things. They can kind of reduce what they need or have to carry. It's huge.
Mhm.
yeah.
So Craig's knife is pretty intuitive, in, yeah, intuitive. Yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of tools on there, and they're all well thought out and well positioned. And um, I'm very fortunate. I feel honored to take on this project. And we talked about doing some bigger versions. So you have a couple sizes already, and then we talked about doing some where they're just a knife, and then some where they have a lot of extra tools built in there for multiple applications, and then some different price ranges and stuff. We're all sorting all that out, but I'm really excited to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, we could make one out of an unobtainium. For people that have to have just the absolute ultimate, and tier one guys will probably want to run those.
Yeah,
And then something that's a little more affordable for regular use.
yeah,
Still an epic quality
yeah, yeah.
tool, but
We'll be bringing
I'm
those to
excited about
market.
that because
Yeah,
look, I've worked with probably 12, 14 different knife makers, including the one that sells the most knives on planet Earth, and know all those guys, and they've had a look at it, and they've all got their business models and what they like to make, what they like to sell
yeah,
at that time, at that year. Wow, this is hot this season. We don't want to. I'm like, but this is going to be useful and needed for a long time. Like, you'll sell a lot of these, and to the right guys, they're like, yeah, well, our board, people that are admin people that are sitting there, that they're just running numbers. And
yeah,
I'm like, okay, none of those were the right people. And when I met you, unlike some other knife makers that either try to take my design and make money on it behind my back, like one local guy did here, we caught him at SHOT Show selling my knives. He's like, they're not selling. And his guy's like, dude, they're selling like hotcakes. Like, okay, not cool. That's not what we want. So he quit. And others that wanted to take it and make it their design, they wanted to change it to suit them. I'm like, dude, this is not your knife.
yeah,
It's my knife.
yeah,
I'm just giving you a chance to make it and sell them. And it wasn't until I met you that you're like, I'll make your knife.
yeah.
and I'll do it right. I'm like, wait, what?
So it's kind of
That's a novel idea.
yeah, I think it's pretty courageous for somebody to have somebody like you come to them with your resume and then think that we're gonna know more than you about what you guys need. It's
Right.
hilarious. Yeah. They're all out there. I mean, what you run into a lot in the knife industry, I'm sure the gun industry and other industries are the same, but everybody you talk to is an expert.
Right.
They all know what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. They definitely don't want to make stuff that they didn't design. Most of them, it's kind of sad and funny at the same time. But there's a lot of Type A personalities in the knife industry, and they all think they're the genius.
So with the setup that you have now, obviously it's in a growth kind of stage. You're getting that more.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Right now, like I said, so this house that we just moved into beforehand, I literally just worked out in my garage,
Mhm.
and it's fine. People can come by and normally I don't have my information listed unless if it's on a brochure that's going into a department. I don't have it listed publicly, so they feel more. Anyone who comes over is more comfortable of anonymity. They
Mhm.
don't know. No one knows that they're going to be there or whatever that place is.
Right.
You know, so. The garage is fine working out of there, but and then luckily my last house we had three-car garage, so a lot more space to work with. And now I have that DuPont covering and the flooring, so it's like
Right.
okay, I'm obviously not gonna drop hot steel on this and burn chemicals and smell that. It's
Right.
not cool. So 'cause you drop a lot of hot steel. So now I have probably like maybe 20 feet by 40 feet in my side of my house that
Mhm.
I have room to play with to build a shed. And hopefully, I mean, with all a lot of it is sound deadening too. I mean, you're smacking an anvil, and I have wrapped in chain, I have it sitting on epoxy, and I have magnets stuck to it. I have everything that I can to make it essentially putting, a tax stamp on on my anvil, to
Mhm.
make it quiet. And I've done really well about neighbors not worrying or complaining and it's not like I'm hammering on the anvil all day long. We're working on that steel probably for about 45 minutes and the guy's gassed out or we get done what we need to get done.
Mhm.
So really it's just about finding the right size or shape or really whatever it is storage shed more or less. That's what I'm going to have to build to make a shop,
Mhm.
and just get creative with like the with furnace and having maybe a swing arm so it goes outside and stuff like that. Thinking about insulation. Obviously, we're in Arizona, so the best
Mhm.
time to forge right now would be right now.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I've personally forged in 109-degree heat in my garage before. And I've done that.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, well, it's 100 degrees in the garage,
Yeah.
right? But then you're standing over the furnace and stuff. People are
Right.
like, "What the heck are you doing, dude?" It's like, trust me, I've been in heat
Yeah.
like this, man.
Oh,
You just
There you
drink
go.
water. So just drink water.
And
Yeah.
salt.
And
that's
yeah, and
all.
salt, some
Yeah,
electrolytes,
for
man,
Mhm.
sure.
salty water.
Yeah.
So, there's seasons to it. Right now, really, how much is a shed if I find the right one? Maybe $3,000 or something like that from Lowe's or whatever, and then just got to build it.
Yeah.
So, um, it really, and after getting built, throw everything right now.
Mm.
All my shop is literally just on one side of the garage.
So I was thinking that it's not that hard to set up a 50, what is it, a 501
501c3.
501c3.
c3? Yeah,
Yeah.
that. Um, I've actually done that before. It's not that difficult. It's just paperwork, lots of stuff you got to get done.
Yeah.
If that were something that were in place, do you feel like that's something that you would want to
I would love
kind
to.
of, actually turn it into that sort of organization so you could actually expand a little bit more and
I would. So the reason why I didn't before is because I understood I had to have board and member
Hmm.
of board, but I'm just the only guy. So I can be the treasurer and the
right.
president and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
I can't really do that. And
Mhm.
so my other buddy who did I think it was like Warriors Fishing Code or something like that, and he
Mhm.
had a few guys to help him out. So he took guys out, first responders mainly, to
Mhm.
go fishing and stuff like that. So
There you go.
I need that.
Right.
So that's what I really need. Before when I was in Texas, because I started getting a lot more people, I ended up getting an LLC. Even though
Mhm.
I still have an LLC, but I made sure I made $0 on the LLC. The only reason why I have it is for liability, just in case if
Right.
God forbid someone wasn't as cool as they said they were and got hurt and decided to sue me, even
Mhm.
though I was doing something good for them.
Right.
So they'd sue the LLC instead.
Mhm.
So that's the only thing.
Yeah. So, well, part of a community now.
Yeah.
I'm sure that one way or another we'll get that figured out. And
I was a business banker, so I know how to file all the paperwork too. So
Outstanding.
it's not hard,
so
but you do have to have a board.
so at this point, how would people find you most easily?
On Facebook.
Just on
The
Facebook?
Warriors Forge.
Warriors Forge. Okay.
The Warriors Forge. And you look it up, and I mean, there's going to be probably just a picture of some dude grinding or something like that, or hitting an anvil. And it says that I'm located in Texas right now. I haven't updated it because I just had,
Right.
just got here. So I will be updating that. But shoot me a message, anyone listening, and just know be available in a couple months here. I
Right.
mean, it'll probably be late spring or maybe mid spring. Hopefully, I'm praying for that. I mean, it's still kind of late. I mean, winter still, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I know,
technically.
technically, right? I mean, it's Arizona, man. So
Right.
I mean, it's already gonna be hot in May. So yeah, I'll do what I can. And the thing is too, that's what I was asking where your shop was because because that's something my wife was really pushing. Like, you really need to get your own shop somewhere, and I don't know what it costs anymore to like rent out a shop space or to share a shop space with
Yeah.
someone. And
So
then,
we'll talk. We'll kind of game plan that
Yeah.
and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
So I definitely want to be respectful of everybody's time. So
yeah.
if I could kind of go around one more time, how people find you, reach what you're doing.
Yep. Veterans for Child Rescue. You can reach at v4cr.org.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Once again.
Sutton Faircloth, and you'll find me at the Warriors Forge on Facebook.
All right.
Kevin Moore, and you can find me at m3tacticaltech.com. All my links to social media is on there too.
There you go. And this is the Non-Victimation Podcast. You're obviously watching. I'm going to make sure that I put links to all of the different organizations and where they can help support and offer whatever they can. And I would love to see all of this become much more successful because people need these things.
Yeah.
The work that you're doing is incredibly important on a level that is supersedes most other things that we think are important.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate your time.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can now support the Non-Victim Nation by donating via listener support directly on Spotify. Remember, the story of your life is being written right now, and you are the hero.